Hey, my friends, welcome back to the UNCOMMODiFiED podcast. My name is Tim Windsor, and this episode, again, is just going to be one of these short little episodes that you can listen to, and hopefully I can provoke you to do some thinking. What I want to talk to you about today is an idea that I talk to my clients about a lot when I'm talking about culture, but I want to talk to you about it in relationship to your own personal culture, or maybe an organization, or maybe a community group, maybe your own family. It doesn't really matter, but I want to talk about two different ideas or ways to think about how we can get ourselves or others aligned around a common understanding, particularly when it's a common value. And I want to talk about being centered, not bounded. I want to talk about being centered, not bounded. And what I mean by this is when you think of different ways that we can organize ourselves as humans around something, a cause maybe, or we can orientate our life around something. We can look at it where it's about following rules, let's say. And many organizations, many families sort of run by drawing a boundary around a box and say, here are the rules that we use to engage. These are the rules of the house. And when you follow the rules, you're in, and when you don't follow the rules of the house, you're out. And by the way, that can be true of an organization, it can be true of a family, it can be true of a society. We draw rules and regulations. And now, let me be really clear. Rules and regulations are not bad, but that's not the most positive ways to get people to align around a cause or an understanding or a belief. There's a different way. And I want you to think about this again. You can draw a boundary and say, here's the rules of this family. And we'll use a family, for example. Here's the rules of this family. And when you obey them, you're in, and we like you. And when you don't obey them, you're out. So everything is about seeing how close you are or how far away you are from the boundary, the fence line. The other way to look at it is the way that the cosmos is set in motion. The cosmos around us, our universe, I want you to think about it. Our universe is a system that is full of rules and regulations, gravity and all these other things that seem to govern the universe and how it works. Yet, the great architect of the universe, if there was one, or just the Big Bang itself, didn't create just a box or boundary to stick the planets in our universe and said, go anywhere you want in here, just stay inside this box. No, the great architect of the universe, or that which architected our universe, depending on how you want to look at it, seems to have set in the center of this thing a powerful, warming, life-giving force. And planets were brought together somehow and align around that life-giving sun in an orbit pulled around it, so they we're going around and around it through their positive attraction to it, and they're kept at play by it. And that is a very different way of looking at keeping things aligned. See, we can keep things aligned by drawing a box and rules and regulations, they stay within it. Or we can keep things aligned by saying, look, I'm creating a powerful, positive center for us to align around. And what I found in organizations and even in families, when we stop spending so much time drawing the boundaries, but we spend more time saying, is the center, here's our positive, life-giving values that we want to orbit around, then planets stay aligned. They don't collide. They stay aligned because of their their positive attraction towards that center, not their fear of the boundary. It's a very different way to look at life. It's a very, very, very different way to look at business. It's a very different way to look at our community groups. And so my challenge to you, first of all, personally, is are you a draw a boundary rules kind of person in your life for yourself and others? Do you keep yourself contained? Do you keep yourself under control by just drawing rules and regulations for yourself and others? Or are you a person that spends a lot of time finding a life-affirming center, a positive value that you can orbit around? And do you spend time creating relationship and understanding towards that positive center and keep moving around that center? Is that your orientation? Is it a positive center that attracts you and keeps you orbiting? Or is it a boundary of do's and don'ts that you operate in? Think about it for your business. Think about it for your community group. Think about it for your faith group if you have it. Doesn't matter. Think about it for your regional council in your government. Doesn't matter. I want you to think about it this way. See, I can set a rule that says, in our family, the rule is we give away a certain amount of money to help people. That's a rule. And if you do it, you're in, and if you don't do it, you're out. Or I can set a positive, life-giving force, a sun, as it were, in the middle of my family and say, generosity, being generous with what we have, our time, our money, our resources, is a value that we have as a family. And if we orbit around that positive, life-giving sense of generosity, then more times than not, we'll be generous and we'll be moved and we'll be propelled towards generosity. Not for fear of not being generous enough, but because of the life-giving force that generosity gives us. That's just one example. So again, I want you to think about this. Are you more of a boundary person? Draw the boundaries. Now, of course, I'm not talking about boundaries in the sense of personal boundaries. It's good to have personal boundaries. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the way you look at how you attract yourself to doing certain things. Being generous, being loving, being caring, being kind, having integrity. Do you just draw a boundary, a box of rules and regulations in your life? You're in or you're out? You're good or you're bad? Or do you spend time identifying and calling people towards and yourself towards a life-giving center? That's my challenge to you. What's your orbit? What are you orbiting around? Are you orbiting around a positive center? I want you to identify those positive centers and find your orbit around them. Stop just drawing the box of rules and boundaries and saying you're in or you're out. Cause people to orbit with you and everything will get better. Thanks very much. Have an excellent day. Remember, centered, not bounded.